such as Echo Show, Echo Spot, and Echo Show version 2, among other Alexa-enabled products. As a product manager, he leads the end-to-end process of building a device from initial concept, business approval, hardware, software, beta feedback, and launch. Before Amazon, Dr. Nabar worked in Microsoft Windows and Windows Phone groups, building wireless communication features and networking APIs for Windows Phone and Windows 10 OS. Outside of work, he's an avid hiker, Seahawks fan, and doting father to a 1-year-old. He was also the most sociable member of the group, always planning our quarterly group dinner and other activities, and also many other things. So it's a fun time having him as a student and now seeing how great he grows. I'm sure we will have a lot to learn from Sid. Please help me welcoming Dr. Nabar.
All right, hey, good morning everyone, and thanks for coming out. Dr. Nabar makes me sound way too old, so I go by Sid. So you guys can call me Sid. And today's talk is not formal at all. Feel free to jump in, ask questions, even in the middle of the talk if something is not clear. It's just more about me talking to you guys about what I think I've learned as I went through school, just like you guys, through undergrad and then through grad school, and then the first few years of my career. I don't claim to be successful at all because I'm still way early in my career. So these are just some learnings that I have to share. And if you don't agree with some of them, or if you have something to add, please feel free to jump in. So I'm sure you're first wondering who's this guy and what's he doing here. So as Radha mentioned, I was his PhD student. I graduated in 2011 from Department of EE, which is now proudly called ECE. I'm also an avid Seahawks fan. You'll see me in the stadiums every once in a while. And I really enjoy hiking and mountaineering as well. This is me in 2013 on my Rainier Summit. So just typical Northwest guy. So why am I here? The reason I'm here is, I'm a proud alumnus of the ECE department. As I said, I graduated in 2011. And since then, I've gotten some great opportunities to work at some fabulous companies and good teams. And so I just wanted to share some of my learnings with you guys and see if it helps you navigate your college time as well as moving ahead into your career. So after I graduated from ECE, I joined Microsoft. And at that time, Microsoft was in an interesting place. It was reacting to the iPhone launch. And so we started our Windows Phone brand with Windows Phone 8, 8.1. It was a great time to be there. Although Windows Phone sort of failed in the marketplace, the amount of learning we got and the amount of teamwork we had was just amazing. Then we moved on to Windows 10, which we now know has launched like all over the world and goes to a large range of devices, from servers to IoT devices. After 5 years at Microsoft, I thought it was time to change it up, learn a new culture, go to a different company, try something new. So I joined Amazon Alexa. This was when Alexa was just taking off as the new voice assistant, smart speakers were becoming a thing, and so on. And so I joined what is called the Echo Devices team. And so my part of the team basically owns all of the Alexa devices that have a screen on them. And so as a product manager, it's an incredible opportunity to be involved right from when we decide like, oh, what should our next device be? All the way to actually shipping the device, launching it, being involved in the press event, and things like that. So it's a really good opportunity. I'm fortunate to be part of the team. This is the Echo Spot. You guys may have seen it online. And then this is the Echo Show V2. These are the two most recently launched products. So just a great opportunity and good learning. I'm sure you're wondering how long is this talk, so I wanted to warn you right up front. It's about 51 minutes. Might want to get comfortable, hydrated and stuff. I'm kidding, it's not. It's just 49 minutes. All right, so in this talk, we'll basically go through 4 parts. And so it's going to be simple to digest. And if you take nothing else, at least take these 4 main pieces with you, and you can easily remember the rest. So as I look at the different people around me who I consider successful or who I consider as role models, they all sort of embody these 4 qualities, right? And so these 4 qualities seem to be a good indicator for who would later be a successful person. So the first one is dependability, second is collaboration, building the expertise, and then action. And we'll go through each one of them to show you what I mean by each. So the very first one I put there is dependability, because I think all the other attributes are sort of meaningless unless you have dependability, right? And so let's jump into what we mean by dependability. Hi. So this one is a no-brainer, right? Like it feels too simple to even put on a slide, but you'll be amazed at how many people don't do this, right? And it's a very simple thing. We all have watches on us, we all have smartphones. It's not hard. And just being on time develops this discipline and shows the other person that you value their time, right? And that you are not more important than the whole team who's waiting for you and you walk in 10 minutes late to the meeting, stuff like that. So it's really important, very, very basic. Just make this habit, keep this habit, even for simple things, like even if it's a party, just make a habit of being on time and it'll serve you really well. The funny thing is, in a lot of, as you graduate and you join companies, you'll see a lot of the busy executives in companies have sort of back-to-back meetings, they're running from one to the other, yet amazingly, they'll always be on time because they plan their day accordingly. This is a fun one, so very short quiz. What do you think is common between these 4? So this is when you were asked to get a box of donuts to your class and you signed up to do that. This is a class project with multiple people. This is a software developer writing his code. And this is Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, launching Office on iOS and Android. The thing that ties these 4 seemingly different things together is honoring your commitment, right? Whether the commitment is super small, like, oh, I'll get the donuts to class tomorrow, versus almost a global scale, that we will launch Office on iOS and Android within 3 years or within 4 years. It's just the principle of when you promise something, you've got to deliver on it, right? And no matter how small or big, in fact, the smaller it is, the better it is to just make practice of it. And so then the larger ones, it comes automatically. But you do have a secret option. So if you think you can't meet your commitment, it's your job to inform early, right? So this happens a lot, especially in companies where, let's say you become a developer, you're working in a team, you say like, okay, I've got my part of the code, I'll be done by Friday. And then you work super hard, you're like on Thursday midnight, you're like, oh man, I promised this for Friday, this is just not getting done, and there's like bugs all over the place, and you just don't get done, right? Intuitively, it feels like, no, I'm going to try till the very last minute before I admit failure. But that doesn't help anyone, right? It doesn't help the team, it doesn't help you, because you work in pressure. Instead, the right thing to do is warn your manager or whoever is depending on that way ahead, saying, look, I'm still going to try to do it, but this is at risk. I want to let you know these are the parts I'm stuck on. And maybe he'll like assign it to someone else, or he'll like relax an assumption that you have been making and it's making it hard. So honor your commitments. If not, inform people early. The next one is this concept of just being consistent in delivery, right? And by me being here, I'm not claiming to be a consistent delivery guy, but this was a super, super great opportunity I got 6 months into my Amazon role. So we actually had a launch event where we launched all of these devices together. And so we had press from the US, UK, Germany. Our SVP, who reports directly to Jeff Bezos, was presenting, and he gave a demo of each product. And I was chosen to represent my product and make it ready for the demo, give him the script, train him how to demo it. I was like, really? I'm just 6 months into the role, and you want to trust me with something this big? But then when I talked to my manager, she told me that it was because in the first 6 months, even on the smaller things, they had seen me deliver consistently on what I took up and run independently with it, which is why they felt comfortable giving me this opportunity. So the lesson here is basically whatever you take up, just try to be consistent and deliver on it consistently, because your track record really does matter. And then the next one and the last one in dependability is following through on promises. So this one is again really interesting. So in as you graduate and you join a company, you'll find that you'll be in a lot of big meetings where you are representing the thing that you are an expert at, right? Let's say you're a developer or you're a product manager, you're representing your product, but there's multiple leaders, maybe even a vice president, directors in the room, and they ask you a question. Like, for example, like how many people use Alexa for more than 3 hours in a day? At that time, you have two choices, right? You either try to make something up, or you just say, I don't know. The right answer is always say, I don't know. Like, do not bluff. People will always catch your bluff. And so the right thing to do is, sorry, I don't know that. I don't have that information. No one can expect you to have 100% of the world's information at any given time, right? So it's absolutely okay to say, I don't know that, but I'll follow up and I'll get back to you in X days, 4 days, a week, 2 weeks, whatever. But then the critical part is you actually follow through. Because guess what? The other people will remember that you promised that, and they will bring it up in the next meeting saying, hey, sir, you took an action item to follow up on that. What's the status? And at that time, it's incredibly important that you have done your diligence. So that was dependability. I hope you get a slight flavor of what I mean by dependability and what are some sort of everyday things that you can do to cultivate this. The next one is collaboration. So I know there is this feeling of there are some roles that are more collaborative than others. Like if you're a product manager or if you're a project manager, you're typically more collaborative than a developer or a researcher or a professor. And that may be true to some extent in how you spend like most of your day, but that is absolutely not true overall. Like no matter what you do in this world, whether you become like a restaurant owner, you become a journalist, like I don't care what you do, you will have to collaborate and you will have to work in a team. There is no job in this world now that you can deliver on it completely independently and alone, right? And so collaboration is a very important muscle, and I think school courses, projects and others give you great opportunity to build that muscle. Like how do you collaborate with people and how do you contribute versus getting the best out of others and so on. So let's dive into that one. So first part of collaboration, of course, is being able to communicate, right? And people often misunderstand communication as, oh, someone who is good at talking and who talks a lot, is not introverted, someone who can write well. That's not what communication is, right? Communication is being able to transfer an idea or a thought that you have to someone else. And the hard part about communication is how you do that transfer depends on the opposite end. And so when you work in a company, you'll often work with, so I get a chance to work with a UX designer, a developer, my manager, my director, my VP. The same exact idea, if I'm trying to convey to the 5 of them, I have to describe it and emphasize very different parts of it, right? And that's what is key in communication. You understand what the situation is, what amount of information is right for this, and how you communicate and get your thoughts across. So really important to build this ability. The other part of collaboration is, or the other myth of collaboration is that you typically look at your peers. So let's say you are a developer in a team of 8, you feel like, oh, I have to collaborate with these other 7 people, done. But that's not true. So increasingly in industry as well as I think in education, there's this concept of a 360-degree feedback or 360-degree collaboration, which means that you here are expected to collaborate not only with your peers, but also with sort of 2-hop peers or like some other teams that may not be directly your team, with your manager. And so believe it or not, your boss is not just your boss, like, oh, he gives me work and I report back to him. That's not the role anymore, right? The world has changed and your boss is literally like your collaborator, and it's his job to help you get things done. And this sounds really counterintuitive, but there have been times when I walk into my manager's cabin and say, look, this project is going this way, this is what I need you to do. Please go talk to that person, that team owns this, I need you to drive this. And he accepts it and he does it, right? And so it's much more of a bilateral relationship than you initially think of it. And the same with the team that's reporting to you or your customers. You're all in it together. You're all in it to deliver value. The next one is listening attentively, right? And again, this, like the be on time one, this one seems very easy, but it's incredibly hard to do, especially in the age of Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where all of us are on our phones. You're always like checking what's latest on the feed. It's incredibly hard to have that discipline. But this is almost the most valuable thing you can do for yourself and for your career. Whenever you're in a meeting, whenever you are talking to your team or another team and they're describing what they do or how something works, if you listen attentively, you have that much more knowledge walking outside the room. Otherwise, you have wasted your 1 hour and you don't have the knowledge. So it's a lose-lose situation for you. So make a habit of listening attentively and asking questions. And then the last one, collaboration, is embracing different perspectives. So this is a really interesting case I wanted to just describe to you. So this is the Echo Show version 2, right? And if I ask the room, like, what do you see in the picture? I'm sure I'll get a variety of answers, right? So even in our own team, the hardware engineer will look at like, oh, what is this, a glass that's edge to edge? Oh, that's interesting. Oh, there are these holes that are drilled for mics. What's the radius of this curve and how does that change how the device looks and so on? Or like this fabric on the back. If I ask a UI designer, he's going to look at, this UX is interesting. Like, does this mean I can scroll the list? Is it a vertical list or a horizontal list? Why are these corners rounded and not sharp? Why have you chosen this font? And things like that, right? As a developer, you look at, oh, where's this data coming from? How am I binding that data to the graphics and things like that? So it's just incredibly amazing to be in this environment where you are with like 5 people and they all see very different aspects of the product. And it's great. It's not a disagreement about what is more important in the product. It's actually great because that way you make sure every aspect of the product is paid attention to and is its best version, right? So it's really healthy and encouraged to embrace different perspectives and actually seek them out. Like if you think you have a project team, for example, where all 4 of you are strong in any one area, let's say physics. Seek out someone who is different, right? Seek someone out who is better at math and weak at physics, and then you'll get a more diverse team to collaborate with. So that was collaboration and how you work together to deliver something that's valuable, and you improve in the process and you help others improve as well. So the next one I want to talk about is building deep expertise. So this is a diagrammatic representation of what we call body sensor networks. This was my area of thesis in my PhD, and so it's pretty close to my heart. But Radha will know, when I started, I did not start with this field at all. I started first in signal processing, then we went to wireless sensor networks, localization, and security protocols. And then this opportunity came along, saying there was this group who was working on body sensor networks, and do we want to collaborate with them? And then, sort of in the middle of my PhD, I had to spend months just to understand what is already out there and how this system works, right? It's not, so for the very top level, like, okay, there are wireless sensors on the person, they are sending data to the phone uploads it to the doctor, and the doctor can analyze the data, right? That high level, you can probably get in like 15 minutes, right? But that level of understanding is very often not enough, right? You need to spend the time to go deeper. You need to spend the time to read, to talk to people, to just understand like, okay, in these wireless sensors, what are the challenges? What have people already done? What is missing? What are the problems that need to be solved? Why have they not solved yet? What is, like, clearly I'm not the first one to think about this and like, I'll come up with a solution in an hour. Someone must have thought about it. So what are the challenges? And then what are the challenges in each layer? what are the assumptions people are making, are those assumptions still true, and so on. So you really need to spend good quality time on something that you take up and become an expert in it. I'm sure everyone knows who this is. It's Elon Musk. And although he's popular for Tesla and SpaceX and Solar City, one of his really famous attributes, which not everyone knows of, is what he calls thinking from first principles. And that's one of his qualities that sets him apart from other CEOs or other people that you work with. And what that means is, like I've read his biography, and it turns out that when he works with employees of his company, and you tell him like, I think we should use whatever, fuel X for this shuttle. He'll ask you questions till you get down to the very basic chemistry of that element, right? And so the answer like, oh, we should use X because NASA is using X today, and X is cheaper than Y, so let's just use X, is not enough, right? You have to go down to the very basics of, what makes X special to use in the rocket? Why not Y, why not Z, why not invent something new, and so on. The other reason mastering the basics is important is just think about the timeline, right? You're in college now for 4 years, you'll graduate, and then maybe you'll go to grad school, maybe you'll work. In either case, once you start working, you'll be working for about 40 years till you retire. And there is no way technology is going to remain the same for those 40 years, right? So today machine learning and artificial intelligence is all the hype. There is no way it's going to remain where it is for 40 years, right? So just learning the very specific algorithms that we use today, the very specific tools, is no good, because 10 years down the line, they're not going to be around. 20 years down the line, they're not going to be around. So the only thing that will be around is 1 plus 1 will still be 2, right? And so you have to go down to the basics, master the basics, so that any new concept that comes in, you can learn it and you can quickly master that. The next one is seeking out experts, and this is super counterintuitive. Like if I asked you, saying like, oh, you need to learn this new concept, and person A, B, C are really, really good at it, you should go talk to them. The first thing that comes to your mind is, why would ABC spend time with me? Right? Like, what's in it for them? I'm sure they're incredibly busy people. They have titles like principal engineer, principal software architect. Like, why would they spend 1 hour talking to some dumb person like me, telling me how the basics of this work? But you'll be surprised. You'll be really surprised. Like in Microsoft, I remember in my first few years, I would literally like schedule half an hour. I would ask them like, if you want to do coffee, I can do coffee. If you want to meet during lunch, I'll do lunch. I just want 30 minutes of your time. I want to learn about this. And people are incredibly happy to help you learn, right? And looking back, I think there are a couple of reasons for it. One, their expertise is actually more useful once they share it, right? That way the whole world doesn't keep coming to them for that question. Now they have like imparted it to other people, and so now people may come to you instead of coming to them. So in the longer run, they actually save time. And the second is they are truly passionate about this area, and they want to help other people learn about it and spread the knowledge. And so it's incredibly useful, and you'll learn way more in half an hour with that person just one-on-one versus trying to read books or trying to like read online and things like that. It's very, very enriching. So I highly encourage you, even in school, if there is like a senior student who has already taken that course, if there's a professor, just shoot an email to the professor saying, hey, like, I'm trying to learn this, I'm having a hard time, can you please spend 30 minutes with me? If the professor doesn't have time, he'll probably ask a teaching assistant to do it for them, but it's a very, very valuable thing to do. And the last thing in building deep expertise is this habit of writing. So one thing that was new to me when I joined Amazon was that it's a very heavy writing culture. And it's really interesting. Like when you walk into a meeting, generally each meeting has a document. And there's one person who is the document owner who comes in with the document written and printed. You pass it out, and if it's a 1 hour meeting, people typically silently sit around the table reading the document for 20 minutes. The first time you do it, it is incredibly sort of, what's the word? I don't know, it's just incredibly creepy.
Impatient driving.
Sorry?
Impatient driving.
Yeah, you're like, come on, let's start talking. Like, this is weird. Like, why is everyone quiet and like just reading paper? Like, it's really weird. But it is incredibly helpful. Like, once I've done that for 3, 6 months and now a year and a half, it is incredibly helpful when you have a thought in your mind or you have an idea and you start writing it down. You get insights. Your thought becomes clearer. You find gaps in your thinking that you haven't addressed and so on. And by writing, I obviously don't mean like 3-step bullet points like this. It's more like a research paper or even a one-pager narrative. You don't have to follow like any formatting or font and all that stuff, but just a very clear structure of what am I trying to solve, what has already been done in this space, what are my assumptions, what is the solution I'm proposing, and how do I know that solution will work? Like, what are the experiments I've done, or what is the data that I have, why do I think this will work? Just writing down that clearly in real full sentences, not bullet points, gives you incredible insight, and you'll often find like, wait, I'm saying this, but I don't know if that's true, or why would someone believe me that when I say this? And so it just drives more rigor as you write. And it's also the best way to remember something once you actually write it down in pen and paper. So that was the third part, which was building deep expertise. It's incredibly valuable to be considered an expert in something. Like, that's the best compliment someone can give you when you're in a company or even in college, saying, oh, go talk to X, he's the expert in that. Like, it's incredibly satisfying when you're considered that. The last one for today is action. And so there's this quote from Douglas Horton saying, action cures fear, inaction creates terror. I don't know if Radha remembers, but in one of my weak points, when I was super worried about a paper we were writing, I'm like, I don't know how this is going to work, we have 3 weeks left. Radha actually told me this in his office, saying, the only way to cure fear is through action. And that has really stuck with me. I keep asking myself that every time I'm in a hard spot. And the question you always ask is, what can I do? Right? You will always be faced with times when you're worried about something, like, I don't know, like the promotion cycle is coming up, I don't know if I'll get promoted this year. Oh, the project is due in 1 week, I don't know if that team will deliver their part. Oh, I don't know what my manager thinks about me, maybe he'll fire me this year. Or like, our project is due next week, I don't know if the other person is going to do his part, or if his part of the code and my part of the code will work together. I'm just so worried. In all of these situations, ask yourself, is there something I can do today to negate that? Right? And often, very, very often, the answer is yes. And there's simple things, like in the promotion case, just go to your manager and ask him straight, like, hey, how do you think I'm doing? Do you think I'm delivering at the level of senior? Would you consider me as eligible for promotion? Like, there's nothing bad about asking that. In the case of the project coordination between the two codes, see if the other person can give you sort of a stubbed API code where it's not actually working, but at least the interface is ready, and see if your code will work with him 3 days before it's due. And so there's always something you can do to help solve the situation that is actually causing fear to you. So I know this is super pixelated, I don't know if you can read it, but it was just way too funny, and so I had to put it up there. The next thing is being proactive. So this is a PhD comic strip, I'm sure, I'm not sure if you guys read it yet, but those of you who will go to grad school will surely read this. And Cecilia basically gives her professor a very specific list of items she needs from him for approval and stuff, and she actually adds deadlines and reminders. And he asks her who is managing whom. So this is just one of the examples of how you can take control. And I know Radha mentioned, like the previous speaker also talked